Hey, welcome back to the Gilbertson Aero Factory. Today is Wednesday, the 7th of January, 2026. It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so I've got about 45 minutes or an hour to try to get a little bit of stuff done, which means this work session probably won't be the whole video. Left flap is done, at least this part of it. Now it's about getting the control surfaces mounted to the airplane. So I've already done one set of the aileron push tubes, the one that go from the bell crank to the aileron itself. Now I need to do the big push tubes that go from the stick to the bell crank. I'm going to get started on that today. And then I think as part of this video over the next couple of days, as I'm doing work here and there, I'll give you a better look at what I'm doing with the tools that I got from Hisham over at Clemson Aeronautics. And there was something else. Oh yeah, you guys got to check out the podcast. We Are Not Experts in Airplane Building podcast. Tim and I are back into a flow there, and it's getting better and better. So I would love to have you guys check it out, share it with your friends, and share your feedback and your glowing reviews. Anyways, enough of this. Let's get to that, and let's build an airplane.
Okay, we're going to see how this voiceover goes, keeping up with things. What's going on here? Okay, yeah, just getting the now completed left flap out of the way so we can start work on the next section or the next part of this section, which is getting into attaching the control surfaces. And the first part of the instructions are to create the aileron push tubes. We have two different kinds of them. We have the ones I already did, which go from the bell crank to the aileron itself. So they run kind of front to back, like in the direction of flight. And then we have long push tubes that they call, I think, control stick to bell crank push tubes. And that's pretty descriptive. You know what it is. So I've got this long length of, I want to say it's like 1.25 inch, 1.75 inch outside diameter aluminum tube, and I need to cut it to 69 3/16 inches. Two of them, obviously. Experimented with a few different things, and ultimately, I think I just said, "Nah, screw it," and used an angle grinder to do a rough cut and then clean up the ends. This turned out pretty good, to be honest. The cuts are nice and clean and even. And then we have some thingies that we have to put in the end there. If you recall, with the small aileron push tubes, we had threaded rod ends that were like a press fit in there, and then we ended up welding them in place. And these instead have these caps that receive the threaded rod ends. So we need to, this whole first day of this, so this is more than one day, was kind of all the prep work, cutting them to length. And then I think later in the evening I came back, and you'll probably see it here in a second. I came back and continued with the scuffing and the cleaning and the drilling of the holes that will mount those things. So this is later that same day. You might recall a long time ago that I used my 3D printer to build a drill guide for the small aileron push tubes, and Tim was inspired by that, so he made a drill guide for these tubes to evenly space the 6 rivet holes around the circumference. And so this was a pretty quick process for me. You can kind of see that little gray thing in my hand. That's the drill guide that Tim made. So I didn't have to bother myself with doing all that measuring and figuring out. Tim already did it for me. So this went really quickly. I want to say, what did I say at the beginning of this? I think that this day in total was maybe like an hour and a half of working on this stuff. Even though I have a drill guide, it's a drill guide from a 3D printed material. That means the more you use it, the less precise those holes become, because the drill bit will kind of wallow them out a little bit. That being said, we're talking about thousandths of an inch moving around, but it does mean the little cone-shaped cap thing that you see me putting in there basically the first thing we do is we drill the 6 holes around the circumference of the tube, and then we position the cap inside the tube and then use the tube as a guide to match drill that thing. So that means that the 4 different cap thingies that we match drilled are all going to be just a little bit different because they were all drilled 1 hole at a time. All this to say, you see me with the pen there. I'm being careful to make sure that each cap is assigned to a specific end of a specific tube, and that there's 1 hole that is like an index, so that they will all end up in the same place when it comes time to rivet these on, which is on this day, Thursday. Why is there no video? Oh, there is video. Okay. So Thursday is part prep and finishing day, which I don't know if it was a good idea to do them both in the same day. But the instructions are to prime the inside of these tubes. Not everybody does, but I did. So putting a Scotch-Brite pad on that little snake pole thingy to push it back and forth through, clean it up, deburr all the holes. This is all just a bunch of the usual getting ready to prime kind of work. I've got a little bit of time here to get some stuff done, and then I think I had to go hit the road and meet a client. So I think that before I headed out, I did all this cleaning up and primed these guys, which a tube that length, trying to evenly coat the inside of it with primer is pretty tricky for an amateur like me, but I did the best that I could, and probably at least as good as average, if not better. But when I was, you'll see me here a little bit later, I'll roll that rack that's in the very back of the shop there. I'll roll that outside so I can prime these things. And I mentioned before that I'm very careful. You see me marking it again. Very careful to make sure that each end is marked with whichever cap it uses and that they're indexed correctly. And so when I hang them up outside here, I'm going to, spray the inside and then pour some primer in there, and try a few different ways to make sure that there is a significant amount of primer being applied to the entire length of the inside of that thing. Okay, back to what I was saying before. I got a little trigger happy with the primer when I was priming the exterior of the tubes, because I didn't want to move them around. I didn't want to reorient. Once they were hanging on that rack, I took photos of the ends of them so I could see how the holes were indexed as it was hanging, and then I sprayed them knowing I was going to cover up the markings on them. So I needed to make sure that I didn't, while I'm priming them, move them around to try to get a different angle, because in doing so, I would lose track of the index. So that meant that there were a few spots, particularly along their round, so I guess there is no bottom, but at least the way that they're hanging, the underneath side, which was harder to get the primer on, I got a little goopy with it, which only means that when I came back from my meeting, which was an hour and a half or 2 hours later, they were still a little bit tacky. Ordinarily, it's dry to the touch in 20 minutes and pretty workable within 30 minutes. So I really gooped it on in some spots. But when it's all done, I'll probably hit them again, just to even out. There they are. I'll probably hit them again to clean them up a little bit. So I think now, let's see. I must have just gotten back from my meeting. Yep, because I'm wearing a different costume. And now we're getting to my favorite part, which is riveting those caps on. And I say my favorite part because these go in with really easy to use blind rivets. And it almost makes me want to build an airplane that's made entirely out of blind rivets, because everything here just goes so smoothly and easily. It seems practically impossible to mess it up. I mean, you could cut that thing to the wrong length, sure. But when you look at the plans, they give you 2 different lengths, one for an RV-7 and one for an RV-8. I'm building an RV-8, and it is a longer length. So if I somehow read it wrong, the only possibility would be a shorter length, which would mean I would have to take length off. So that's an easier thing to fix than buying new ones to be longer. You can kind of see those shiny spots where I got really heavy-handed with the primer on there. So those are all attached and essentially done. So that, I think, a little shop cleanup, and that's gonna, let's see. I'm getting ready to bring the wings, or bring a wing inside. So the next part of the step says, lay the wing on a table, because we're going to attach the aileron bell crank. So we'll see how this goes. Turns out this wasn't a good idea. I'm just going to tell you right now, don't do this. Two things. One, don't one hand or a single person move the wing by yourself. It's pretty sketchy. And you probably noticed that wing was really close to the garage door. When the wing is in the vertical orientation on top of the table, it only clears the garage door by maybe 2.5 inches. So the plans say specifically, do this. Put the wing flat on a table with the bottom side up, and then we'll attach the aileron bell crank. Here's what I found, and you'll see me struggling with it. It is really hard to reach the things that you need to manipulate for the aileron bell crank with the wing laying down like this. Really hard. And so the first thing that I did, I realized that the mounts for the aileron bell crank are already mounted, but you can't actually install the bell crank with them already in there, because there's a long bolt that needs to pass through a bushing and through those brackets, and the bolt already has to be installed before it gets mounted to the spar. So I need to remove those brackets from the spar, and this is sped up 20 times, so it won't look very long, but it was really like 15 minutes of trying to get those things unbolted. And when I walked back around the wing, I realized I unbolted the wrong thing because I couldn't see. Yeah, comedy of errors. I mean, no damage is done. It's just a real pain in the butt. And even setting it the way that I did on the tables like this, so I can walk between the tables and get to the center of sort of the middle of the span, it didn't help. It's a long reach, and it's from either side. It's a long reach. So I called Tim to, ask him a question about when he did this. And I told him that I put the wing up on the table, and he said, really? He said, I did the whole thing in the cradle. It was much easier. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to put it back in the cradle, because I agree. It would be later when I'm working on it in the cradle, you'll see what I mean about how much easier it is to reach. So I was going to go ahead and put it back in the cradle, which again is just sketchy, but in reverse. And Tim kindly offered to make the drive all the way out to my place to help me put it back in the cradle, and we can get on with our life. Which means that the wing cradle that I just moved over to the other part of the garage is now going to come back into this part of the garage, but just everything being much more clean and tidy and everything on wheels, it's not a big deal. The shop is endlessly configurable, and so it'll be fine. I got a lot done in these few days, and here comes Tim. It takes us a long time to actually get this thing off the table and into the cradle, because we usually end up just talking about a million other things. Tim's got a lot of stuff going on with his build too. So, that's as far as I got, which is actually a lot of work compared to what I've been doing the last year. Just squeezing in an hour here and there, and got those stick-to-bellcrank aileron push tubes in place. Got the bushings for the aileron bell crank pressed into the bell crank and reamed out, and they're ready to mount now. And we'll have a little side discussion here on the end that I teased at the beginning. So if you hang around for just a few more minutes, I'll introduce you to the tools that that I got from Clemson Aeronautics. Hisham sent over there. And if you don't, I'll say see you later now. Oh, check out the podcast. Tim and I are recording episode 15 tonight. So I'll put a link in the description later. Here you go.
Hey, welcome back. Today is Friday, the 9th of January, 2026. I was just about to edit this video and I realized that in the intro I said that I was going to talk a little bit about the stuff that I got from Hisham over at Clemson Aeronautics. He was kind enough to send over several things for me to try out. The big obvious one is this one right here. I think he calls it the CAD-1, but it's the answer to the DRDT2, which I love. The difference is obvious. Dimensions are practically identical, but with this one you can use your pneumatic squeezer, and if you set it up the way that I did, you can use your pneumatic squeezer with a foot pedal. And I have not had a chance to actually use it yet. I just got it set up, but I do have to do the bottom skins for my wings, and that's what this is going to be used for. And that means with the foot pedal that when I'm dimpling, I will be able to have both hands on the material at all times, as opposed to the DRDT2, where I'm getting the material position for dimpling and then holding on with one hand and then applying quite a bit of force on this lever. That's a big difference right there. I've seen some people use this without hooking it up to a foot pedal, so they'll get it all positioned and then they'll reach up here and trigger it like that. Still, this is much less cumbersome than the big handle. And the other big difference with the handle is that the handle has to swing all the way out here. So sometimes if you're working with like dimpling on the empennage, especially like the vertical stabilizer or the rudder, there's a big piece of material folded up here. This can be a problem. So anyways, on the topic of the foot pedal, if you remember, I had a problem with it exhausting too slowly because of, I think, if I didn't show you before, because it exhausts out of this really dense brass muffler right here. So I think I told you that I was gonna buy what's called a quick exhaust valve. Here it is, right here. It's like $8 or $9. So when the gas pedal, or rather when the foot pedal is released, the air still has to vent through this length of hose to the quick exhaust valve, but it is dramatically faster than it was before. So right now the pedal's not depressed. If I pull the trigger, nothing happens. If I hold the trigger down and push the pedal, it actuates when I let go. That is probably 4 or 5 times faster than it was retracting before I put the quick exhaust valve on there. So I can live with this. If I put the valve on this end, it would exhaust just like that, just like when we normally use the squeezer. But that would mean I'd have to find the right size fittings to put that right here. I don't want to bother with that because I like this lightweight hose. So that's how that's gonna work. And one other thing, people set up their dimpling devices in different ways, making tables and caddies and stuff like that so you can lay the material on it. I was gonna do all of that in the beginning, and then when I was looking through Van's Air Force, I found this idea, which is what I did and what I've been doing for the last couple of years. Mount it on a piece, this is like a 3/4 inch MDF, and just set a little tray, a couple of 2x4s at the right height right here, and I have a giant table for dimpling everything, and I can move it back and forth. And if you're worried about security, you just take a couple of trigger clamps on either side of the table to hold it nice and tight. So I mounted this exactly the same way that I did my DRDT2, including even adding the little bit of foam core and carpet here. So that's that. Let's talk about the yokes really quickly. The difference between my Longeron yoke and the one Hisham gave me, his is more bulky, but this one has more clearance. That's the primary difference. Bulky, which means much less flex, much more heavy duty, but it has about, if you can see here, probably about close to a ½ inch less clearance because of this little hump right here. And the same thing will be true of the, I don't know what this is, like a 3-inch yoke. Same thing, this little hump right here. Other than that, it's just a much more heavy duty, less flex. The other dimensions are about the same. The big one though is the no-hole yoke. This is my no-hole yoke, and I love this thing, but it's a very short reach. This is the one that Hisham sent me. It is a dramatically deeper reach, probably 2 inches further reach. This would have been helpful on some places like the trailing edge of the wing, and it will be helpful in the future. So this one I'm really excited about. And this little device right here is something to mount to the bench, drill it to the bench, and then you can mount the pneumatic squeezer, drop it in right here, and just have it set up for dimpling ribs and longerons and stuff like that. So we'll try that out. One other thing that he sent me was magnetic pins to replace the normal pins that you use here. I like them. They are magnetic, so they stick to everything. So when you're changing dimple dies or something like that, you think you lost them, they're probably stuck to the pins. But this whole setup here, getting it mounted to the C-frame is much quicker and much less cumbersome than I expected it to be. It's actually pretty quick. So I don't know if I mentioned it already. The hole that the ram passes through on these ones I got from Hisham, I'm gonna have to ream them out a little bit. I tried using this this longeron yoke, and the ram would bind a little bit. It would get sticky. So he machines his stuff to a pretty tight tolerance, which is great because I can take material off. I can't put material on. So I'm probably gonna do that, and I'm probably gonna turn these pins down just a little bit because, again, tight tolerances, they can be kind of tricky to get in sometimes. But other than that, I'm pretty excited to use them some more, and I'll give you an honest review as I get to applying them practically, especially that guy. Okay, that was a long side quest. We'll wrap it up for here. See you on the next one.